It's time once again for Dialogue Conspiracy with Mae Brussell. For the past 14 years, Mae has been researching and uncovering facts and evidence from between the lines of the news and placing them in a more thorough perspective of how conspiracy, political assassination, and abuses of power affect us all. Dialogue Conspiracy originates with KLRB-FM in Carmel, California. And now, Mae Brussell.
Good evening. This is Mae Brussell in Carmel, California. It's Dialogue Conspiracy number 309, and it's Sunday, February 19th, 1978, in Carmel right now. I did say last week that I would continue talking about the Mark Lane article and the Larry Flynt publication in the Los Angeles Free Press, the articles on the Kennedy assassination, analyzing them and giving a full critique of that issue on the Kennedy assassination. But I'm going to have to put it off until next week and do a different subject, because this evening, this program of Dialogue Conspiracy is dedicated to a really great lady, a woman by the name of Lillian Castellano. Lillian Castellano is one of those rare researchers that I've had the good fortune to meet in the years that I've been studying the assassination of John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. Lillian Castellana is now dead. She was discovered at her home this last Friday. She's at the mortuary where there is a piece of paper saying that she had a cardiac failure, which is not a cause of death, but common at the time of death. There is cardiac failure. There's no autopsy on the body. Jack Kimbrough, the researcher, is trying to stop the burial to get an autopsy of it. I was with Lillian a week ago this last Monday in Los Angeles with Ted Charach and Jan Diaz, and at the time she mentioned a particular person who had threatened to kill her and said that she was afraid for her life. Right now the casket is closed. There will be a ceremony this week. The newspaper article in the Los Angeles Times today on her death gives no age, no date when she died, and no cause of death. The circumstances of her death, I want to go in with you and describe this woman to you. She's died in almost total silence, meaning that she wasn't world famous like Dick Gregory or Mark Lane. She's unknown to the world or the mass media because people like this that work with such a determined interest to get the full truth out are they're pushed into a closet or silenced, or certain persons have tried to silence them ever since they came upon hard facts of these conspiracies. She'll be missed by the people who knew her, the people who worked with her, the women and the men who worked with her. We shared information together. We dedicated our lives to exposing murders, assassinations, fascism, and the cover-ups that go with these kinds of illegal acts. Last May, Lillian Castellano was before the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles. She was trying to bring out evidence of the conspiracy to kill Robert Kennedy in Los Angeles because the Attorney General of this state, Evelyn Younger, was a district attorney at the time Robert Kennedy was killed, and Chief of Police Ed Davis, who recently resigned, both men running for governor of California in the next election, were part of the cover-up of this crime. And a group of researchers had begged the Board of Supervisors to listen to this evidence and take action against the Chief of Police in Los Angeles, at least that much, if they couldn't get to the Attorney General of the state. On Dialogue Conspiracy number 277 and 278, July 11th and 18th, of this last year, 1977, I did read the testimony, some of the testimony of Lillian Castellano before the Board of Supervisors, and the things she had to say on this case. And for those of you that subscribe to the tapes, you can play those over and see what she said at those hearings, and maybe you'd like to get a copy of the transcript of her testimony. It's 33 pages, and I have it here, and I can duplicate it at cost, plus the postage. If any of you want to own this testimony that she gave that May 26th hearing last year, I can have it duplicated for you. Mr. Hahn, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, said, "Could I ask you a real personal question, Mrs. Castellana? You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Your dedication and your own money and your own time of 7 or 8 years into this project? And she said, no, longer than that. It's longer than 7 or 8 years. It started with John Kennedy's assassination. And Mr. Hahn said, here's my question to you. Why would you, a citizen, not employed by the government, not on the federal FBI or state or county payroll, why would you, a citizen, dig out all this information and spend your hard-earned money for this kind of investigation? And Lillian said, I wanted to see the truth before I died. I wanted it on John Kennedy, and I could do nothing about it. But here it happened in Los Angeles, and we went down to the Ambassador Pantry, finally got thrown out of there. We went there 3 times to make the map, take the drawings. We arranged the Free Press article, but nobody ever listens. And where do you go? Who do you appeal to? I want to know the truth, and I want to know it before I die. And I'm running out of time, she said. And Mr. Hahn of the Board of Supervisors replied, this is certainly an unusual and dedicated person to do this. It's just an ordinary American citizen who seeks out the truth. I don't know of a better place than right here with television and the open room and the courtroom to take down every word of what you say. And he went on to say, this is a remarkable expression this lovely lady has done on her own money and her own time, and I think she should be absolutely commended for her zeal and her dedication and her terrible concern, one citizen doing this. And I think the record shows and should show that we should put in the record, and we commend her as an American citizen and a public-spirited citizen. I think we should do that. That was part of the hearings down at the Board of Supervisors. Ted Charach called me. This was late Friday night, and he was in a state of shock, of course, and he was crying, and he was very, very close to Lillian. They had worked hard on the Robert Kennedy story, and they'd been kicked around by Mark Lane and Don Freed and a group of people in Los Angeles who kept pushing them in the sidelines, Allard Lowenstein and other people taking their material, ignoring the Robert Kennedy case or writing about it, oscillating between using some of it, and she had accused them of using it and insulting her, insulting Ted. And Lillian and Ted had worked very hard on this case. And Ted Charach had pleaded with these supervisors to examine the evidence and prove that there were 2 gunmen in the Ambassador Hotel the night that Senator Robert Kennedy was killed. Lillian spent $1,000 of her own money to have the photographic evidence compiled, and people attended the hearings, received that, and other researchers received these large maps, identical to maps, with a series of pictures of where all of these bullets were that went into Robert Kennedy and other people in the Ambassador Hotel. This is a critical moment, as far as I'm concerned, in United States history. I personally believe that Evel Younger and Ed Davis are 2 of the most dangerous men of the same ilk as John Mitchell and Patrick Gray and J. Edgar Hoover. People write about J. Edgar Hoover, now that he's dead, as being the Rasputin of the FBI, a man that worked with him and covered up his crimes. And when the true story comes out of Los Angeles and California and Santa Cruz and Marin County and Vacaville and Folsom and San Quentin and Soledad prisons and San Luis Obispo and Chino, when the truth comes out about who's in the prisons and how they got there and who was murdered among the black community and the Chicano community and the hippies and the musicians and the drugging of Howard Hughes and the setup of the Charles Manson family, when the whole truth comes out in a few years from now and gushes out when those men are dead, you'll look back. I hope you'll be alive to see it, because you'll look back and see it more clearly. I talked about some of these people before Watergate and after the Watergate arrests. Then as the years unfolded, the conspiracy talk seemed to make more sense, and listeners would say, well, you're talking more slowly now, or it's more clear now. Nothing is more clear each week than it was before. It's just that once a thing gets into the major media and the Washington Post, the New York Times, then people will listen to a small FM station or a lone woman talking, but until the major media breaks it, it isn't kosher or acceptable. They have to have Cronkite hint or somebody have a touch of scandal, and then they'll listen to what you say, even though the documentation exists years before the major media even admits these things are happening. I say this is a crucial moment in American history because Ebel Younger had direct connections and has to the Pentagon, military intelligence, the CIA, the Watergate teams, and now he's out for a larger career running for governor of California. Chief of Police Ed Davis is also ready to leave the LAPD, and he's running for governor, and whichever one loses will get a major appointment with the federal government later on, even though they're opposing each other now. They're of the same ilk, and their campaigns are literally run by the same kind of people. Ebel Younger's campaign is run by Ken Ritz of the Watergate fame, who had secret accounts, the desk of John Haldeman and Congressman Mills, and Richard Vogary is managing Ed Davis's campaign. He's that organization of the New Right that's so cohesive and linked together. It replaces the Howard Hughes, Mullen Associates combine, or the Korean money going to congressmen. These men are funded by the extreme right-wing fascist group that have been in the conspiratorial counterintelligence part of our state politics continuously and are working their way up. Lillian wanted to live and see the Robert Kennedy assassination plot exposed. She said in her testimony she wanted to live and see the truth. She saw the truth, but she didn't see it acknowledged by other people. She had her hands on the truth and has the evidence of the truth in that case and knew all the facts. But when she said she wanted to see it, she wanted the powers that be to admit it. Now, Lillian knew how the Los Angeles Police Department removed ceiling panels in the Ambassador Hotel and destroyed them, cut off the right sleeve of Robert Kennedy and destroyed it, where it would show the bullet direction of those fatal shots. They threw away Sirhan's gun, and they suppressed pictures in the doorway of bullets in the door jambs. And she knows what the LAPD can do to destroy evidence. Ted Charach was in the Ambassador Hotel when Robert Kennedy was killed. He knew immediately or shortly afterwards that a second gun was fired. He went back and forth across this country wherever necessary to collect the evidence. These people are so dedicated. There's people like Penn Jones in Texas, Jan Diaz in Los Angeles, John Judge in Pennsylvania, Edward Simpson Callas, who lives in Monterey Peninsula with Sirhan psychologists. He's been on Dialogue Conspiracy, spoken at the college here, and is willing to offer all kinds of information anytime you want on the truth of Sirhan's mind and capability and what happened to Sirhan. These people are being suppressed. As I say, their names really don't get the attention they should or the credit they should, and certainly in her lifetime, Lillian didn't get it. Now Lillian is dead, and the circumstances of her final story will be left up to researchers to carry on. I only hope, and I say this on the air and date this program, I only hope that people like Don Freed and Mark Lane don't take Lillian's research and information and put in the Los Angeles Free Press and start writing books and making another 40 or 50,000 off of books using the research that she used and yet would never acknowledge her, introduce her, put her down, ignored her. If they start using her material posthumously, you're going to see an angry Mae Brussell really get mad. If these thieves literally take that material and write and accrue money from it, and she's dead and was treated the way she was by them when she was alive, I will scream as much as I can across this nation if they begin to touch her work. It should be in the hands of people like Penn Jones or Ted Charach, who were loyal when she was living and stuck by her and got out the information they could. And I tried to help her, and I've announced on the program where you could get copies of her documentation that she had made up, and many of you people ordered them or wrote to her. A meeting was scheduled in Los Angeles the Friday before she died at the home of Jim Horowitz. I went down to Los Angeles a week and a half ago, and I had some work to do on a book I was working on, but I purposely set aside one day just to be with Lillian and Jan and Ted, and we got together, and she showed me photographs that have never been printed or publicly disseminated among the researchers of these extra bullet holes in the Ambassador Hotel that both the police and the FBI knew about. And they wanted me to stay over for a meeting at the home of a Mr. Jim Horowitz, who's in the news business and works with various people in the Los Angeles area on conspiracies and assassinations. And Jim is trying to stop the election of Ebel Younger or Ed Davis for being governor of California, either one of them. And he had a meeting at his home called the Truth Committee, and he's trying to form a Truth Committee to get the evidence on these people. And as I've said on Dialogue Conspiracy, I will be referring to them and compiling information that I have from my files to share with you. And Lillian went to that meeting, and instead of them right away acknowledging her work and examining it, there was a lawyer there, a friend of Don Fried's, who began to attack her or discredit her, and she got very upset. And finally, the consensus of the meeting was, well, if you have this evidence of Ebel Younger, the Attorney General of the state, covering up the Robert Kennedy assassination, or former Chief of Police of Los Angeles, Ed Davis, suppressing this, go home and take this information and compile it, and we'll present it to the Truth Committee to try to stop the election of governor of these two men and expose them. So Lillian went home with her documents and her pictures and worked on them all week. And when she was getting telephone calls up till Thursday, talking to people, she talked to Jan Diaz on Thursday, but after Friday and Saturday there were no calls. And Lillian had died evidently Thursday, and finally they broke in her house, and Lillian had been dead. Rigor mortis was setting in. Now, Ted Charach called me, and he was literally hysterical, and he was upset that the police department was going to go in and confiscate her material and her research, and they made some remark to the effect this is another one of those conspiracy people or conspiracy cases. And he was very frantic that the LAPD was gathering up information because she was dead and unattended, and would keep this and then destroy it, and the researchers would not have access to it, and certainly Lillian Castellano would be the very last person in the world who would like to think that her research would end up in the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department, of all places. I understand now that a nephew and his mother have gone into her home, and they're staying there, and some things have been removed. There was at least no will when she was found dead, no place where this research would be safe, where other researchers could use it without just taking it and making a buck off of it, and not at least acknowledging the work that she did. It should be in some special place to preserve in the name of Lillian Castellano. As I say, Ted Charach was frantic about who will get a hold of it and what the police took out of her place. And, of course, what they took from her place, we won't know. I'll have to go down if I can and see if the pictures that she showed us at lunch last week are still there, or if the police department has gathered those up, because the relatives are not researchers and they wouldn't know what she had before, and the material is locked up, and so we don't know what they took out, but they allegedly took things out of her place. When Howard Hughes was in Las Vegas, if that was Hughes or whoever could be impersonating Hughes, I doubt if it was, but the old man that was there, an aide of his named Kay Glenn testified that he did the cleanup job after, let's call him Howard, left in 1970. And Kay Glenn just testified in a court case last week in Nevada on the Mormon will that he took shredders and disposed of everything personal that belonged to Howard Hughes in 1970. Every personal paper he destroyed on his own, even though Howard wasn't alive and there's no it wasn't around consciously. He had a hemoglobin of 6. He was alive, but frail, and the doctor said it would be impossible for that body to make the trip to the Bahamas. But the body went, and certainly in that condition, instead of being hospitalized, they transferred it in the middle of the night, dead of night. But Kay Glenn took his personal papers, and yet there was a time when Howard, or that person, was sending letters out to a party, get me away from here. I don't trust Chester Davis. I don't trust the people around me. He thought that his life was in danger, and the letters of mistrust could be destroyed. His last will at that time, if he had one, could be destroyed. And an aide by the name of Kay Glenn testified, I destroyed everything personal of his. And, of course, after that body that's allegedly used in Mexico City left, they also got the shredder and destroyed personal papers that shouldn't be in the hands of the people who are doing the confining. I'm worried about Lillian's research, and I hope that it will be there for all time for all of us to see, but how would we know? I had an article that I wanted to share with you on Dialogue Conspiracy before I even knew that Lillian had died, and it's from the Los Angeles Times, February 3rd, 1978, and it's about our state attorney general who's running for governor. And he had an interview about a shredding case in Los Angeles. There were charges against the Los Angeles Police Department of well, there have been a lot of shootings and killings and unjustified homicides and potential cases of lawsuits. And when these cases came in charging the Los Angeles Police Department with these crimes, the police department went ahead and destroyed the papers, all records, 4 tons of records of complaints against the police department from 1949 to 1975, just after the Watergate story and the era was breaking into its full bloom. And Evel Younger had a press conference, and he stated that he thought that that wasn't much of a problem, that it was okay to go ahead and shred all of those materials in the police department, even though they were complaints against the police department. He's the Attorney General. This is what this candidate for governor has to say about the matter. State Attorney General Evel Younger characterized the controversial Los Angeles police file shredding case as, in quotes, not that much of a problem. Younger, who officially entered the governor's race Wednesday, said he thought the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office acted properly in the way they handled this case. The Los Angeles Times learned that no charges will be filed in the May 1976 destruction of this evidence against the police department by city attorneys and police officials of 4 tons of records of that they called, in quotes, unsubstantiated complaints made against policemen from 1949 to 1975. Many of you may not know or might not remember that Thomas Noguchi, the coroner in Los Angeles in this time period, was fired because he said that the police were doing the homicides and that murders in the town that were called justifiable homicides he thought were clear-cut murders. So they brought in a fraud from out of the state that went to work for the coroner's office, who was later prosecuted because he said he was a doctor and a lawyer, and he was neither one, and he had brought the charge that Noguchi was crazy and danced over corpses because he had claimed that these justifiable homicides were not justifiable but were murder. So in that time area, there have been many, many complaints. U.S. Attorney Robert Meyer was fired because he was going to prosecute policemen for murders and other crimes and was investigating the riots of the Chicano Moratorium where Ruben Salazar was killed and the Isla Vista riots in Santa Barbara. Robert Meyer complained and was going to prosecute as U.S. Attorney the Los Angeles Police Department and agents of Sheriff Peter Pitchess when Patrick Gray of the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. fired U.S. Attorney Robert Meyer. And at the time, Robert Meyer said that's like the kiss of death. And I called Meyer to see if he'd help me with the Robert Kennedy story because he was the U.S. attorney there, and he knew that he was unsafe because they were stopping him from prosecuting the law enforcement officials. And Meyer said, no, I'm not interested. I'm going into private practice. And a short time later, Robert Meyer was found dead in a parking lot in Pasadena. So Thomas Noguchi knew about these charges that were not unsubstantiated. They were clear-cut cases of homicide. And U.S. Attorney Robert Meyer found out about them. So Evel Younger says it was perfectly all right to destroy 4 tons of records. Younger said, in quotes, there's a potential for conflict in the city attorney's office in Los Angeles because the lawyers have to defend policemen against civil misconduct, but they also have to prosecute in criminal cases and make charges against the officers. So the police and sheriff officials of Los Angeles, I don't know how it is in other cities, the same person that would prosecute them is their defender. So the way to solve the problem is to destroy the evidence. And I bring this up because of the nature of the beast that Lillian was trying to expose, just writing a report on these dogs just the week that she was found dead. The Los Angeles said that Evel Younger stopped short of endorsing a new plan that's being considered by Los Angeles District Attorney John Vandekamp to split the civil and the criminal case responsibilities of the office. Generally, that's the way it is done, Younger said, but he didn't see anything wrong in having these offices both defend and prosecute, and he said it wasn't any problem. It wasn't that much of a problem to destroy 4 tons of charges against the policeman at a time when the chief of police of that city is running for the governor of the state of California. And Evel Younger, who would be in charge of prosecuting that case, is also the governor. And the tentacles of this story don't just stop with the Los Angeles Police Department. There was an article February the 17th, Reuters, 1978, just this last week, about a chain gang in Australia with a local policeman now down there wear Ku Klux Klan shirts, T-shirts with Ku Klux Klan Northern Territory Division, and they carry weapons supplied by the Los Angeles Police Department. They acquire their weapons, and they've been using Aborigine youth into chain gangs. They chain them together down in Australia, Reuters said, in a settlement 600 miles southwest of Darwin. These people have been chained together, and they're ordered to weed public gardens for a day. And there are these various billy clubs and instruments to get at these people. And these youths have stolen a car. One of them stole a car, but it said they've alleged that the policemen had acquired Los Angeles Police Department riot guns, brandished them at the young men, and they had automatic shotguns, pardon me. And they said that the town had 4 stores where they sell to the white community T-shirts with the slogan Ku Klux Klan Northern Territory, and the policemen wear those T-shirts. So that the LAPD weapons somehow reach the Reuters news service, that they're being used on the Aborigine youth down in Australia, which is pretty grim. And I think that you have to consider the links of the tentacles of these people with their international police organizations. Ed Davis was recently entertaining the policemen from Iran and Argentina, and very fine cast of characters in the Los Angeles Police Department convention of the international police. And this is where these men are headed, and that's why they're such important people. Well, Lillian is dead. She did a mammoth amount of work. I can't tell you how badly I feel that she didn't get the acknowledgement of the people that should have been doing it, that should have shown an interest in the case, that treat her and Ted Charach down there the way they do. It's inexcusable and it's tragic, but there are people that remember her work and will keep it going in her memory. At the testimony in May of 1977, these are some of the things she said. She talked about the autopsy of Robert Kennedy, and she said that District Attorney Evel Younger, May 28, 1969, promised full public disclosure of all evidence and listings of various conspiracy theories, but District Attorney Evel Younger never addressed or answered the question about too many bullets in the Ambassador Hotel. That question of too many bullets was ignored in Evel Younger's statement then, has never been officially recognized or officially explained by him since, even when questioned on public television in June 1969. She named the Attorney General Evel Younger then. She said District Attorney Evel Younger, he was DA at the time, still has not told the truth and is now the Attorney General of the state of California. Deputy District Attorney Prosecutor in the Syrian case, David Fitz, became a judge of the Superior Court in Los Angeles. Chief Deputy District Attorney Prosecutor Lynn Compton, who prosecuted Sirhan with Evel Younger, is now a judge of the California appeals case. The United States Attorney Matt Byrne, who came in and replaced Robert Meyer, is now a judge in the United States District Court. The FBI have their own pictures labeled bullet holes, and they have not told the truth. The news media, the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, the CBS have seen the proof and have not told us the proof. Watergate informed us that obstruction of justice is a felony, yet the House Committee on Assassinations was not voted or funded to conduct an investigation of the assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy. And Lillian said, I can ill afford 1,000 copies of these posters, but it's all in one proof. She said, I've spent my own money to show there were too many bullets in one gun in the Robert Kennedy assassination. Well, Lillian will be missed by us, the researchers who knew her and friends who knew her, and we will continue where she left off and hope that her name will be attached to some of the work when the story breaks, and the credit will be given to her that she didn't get when she died, but will go down with her name, and she'll be known as one of those freedom fighters who fought to the very end. This is Mae Brussell. It's Dialogue Conspiracy. I'll see you next week on KLRB.
You've been listening to Dialogue Conspiracy with Mae Brussell.